When you go into your classroom, what is the first thing that you usually focus on? Is it the clock? Perhaps it's your notes or your plan. Or is it the students? Are you mindful of how they're feeling today or how their day is going? My guest this week is Miss Tammy Vincent, educator, speaker, and author of several books. Mrs. Vincent gets her inspiration from her own past and troubled upbringing to motivate and inspire young students, which is exactly what we try to do here on Legendary Educator. We discuss students who come from turbulent homes, how this affects them in the classroom, and some things we can do to reach out to them and reach them. Ms. Vincent even gives us tools that you can implement in your classrooms to build better bonds with your students. Hello, teachers from around the world, and welcome to Legendary Educator, the podcast that helps you improve your performance in the classroom and have more engaged and motivated students. My name is Ramis Takawi. I'm a teacher and instructional coach, and I created this podcast because I'm passionate about education and about students achieving their highest potential. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes as they drop. All right, let's get to know our guest this week.
Hello, my name is Tammy Vincent, and my students called me Mrs. V, and I am now a speaker and an author. And my favorite teacher when I was in school, his name was Senor Wiley. He was a Spanish teacher that was absolutely crazy, but he just instilled in absolutely every person that he talked to that you could do whatever you wanted to do, no matter where you came from or who you were.
Mrs. V, eh? So I was expecting Mrs. Vincent or something like that. Where did Mrs. V come from?
I don't know. My first teaching was first grade, and they just stuck with Mrs. V. I have no idea why. My mother-in-law actually was a bus driver, owned a bus company, and they called her Mrs. V, and it just kind of stuck.
I like it. I guess I'm going to call you Mrs. V as well. So Mrs. V, what are your books about?
So the first one, they both come from my own personal story. And the first one is called Surviving Alcoholic Parents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So kind of, it's not a dramatic story, but it does just kind of give kids a guide. It's a teen's ABC guide for thriving in a world of chaos is what the subtitle is. So it's just how to kind of manage and navigate that part of your life. And then the second one is actually called Helping Children of Alcoholics and Other At-Risk Students. And that one is an educator's guide to identifying and empowering disconnected youth in the classroom.
Okay, and that is exactly what I want to touch on. But first, what is your origin story? How did you get into education? And then, how did you get into motivational speaking and actually writing books?
Well, I got into education just because everything I did, I always went back to teaching. And it was always, if I wanted to, I had a ceramic studio and it came down to doing classes for kids. I've just always kind of had this teaching knack. I like to help kids. I like to, teach Girl Scout lessons and just do, troops and just all kinds of different teaching things. I finally decided later to go back and get my master's. I got my master's in regular in elementary ed, and then I got my special education degree. And I realized really quickly that I wanted to help more children. My very first year in the classroom, I realized that so many of these children were just hurting so badly. So I kind of turned my focus and wanted to do twofold things, actually. One is to help children that come from difficult situations. And the other one is to try to change the whole, I guess it's a movement kind of to change teachers' ideas of children and why they, the saying is now they don't want to learn. And I have a very different aspect about that. I think every child wants to learn. I think we just need to find a way to get to them. And, I've always said, if you can't reach them, you can't teach them.
Right.
And I kind of look at that, give the kids the benefit of the doubt. So my second book is about how to identify, how to find these children that are struggling so badly and give them the self-esteem and the boost up that they need.
It is not a mystery that a lot of teachers go into the classroom and they see students, their faces on desks, or they are a name with a grade without realizing that the student is a complex formula, right? Without being mindful of the fact that the student, has issues at home, has baggage, has a million different things going through their minds, especially in this day and age with all the technology, with all the media and the information. It's a flood of data, of emotions, things like that. But again, teachers go into the classroom with a lesson plan and a curriculum and a deadline and the test and the scores and the grades and all that stuff. Without, and of course, I'm not generalizing, but I'm saying it's not their fault, because teachers have so much on their plate that sometimes they forget to focus on the student as a human being. And so I think that is going to be my first question. How do you identify a pattern or a disconnect, as you called it?
Well, when I was in the classroom, I kind of looked at kids, and of course, I went through my own personal story. So I just saw that empty, hollow look that I know I felt.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like now, they say just addiction alone, it's 1 in 4 children. And then you add in everything else that is there. Like you said, there's a million different things. There's poverty, there's homelessness, there's suicide rates. There's, 4% of our kids don't have any parents right now. Right. So it's like, there's so many different things. So I didn't necessarily even need to identify them. I just tried to reach them all, to teach them self-esteem, to build them up. My book is called Identifying and Empowering, but I try to go about it and just assume that they all came from a not so perfect life, because I'm assuming now that most of them are having struggles of some kind. So, I always said, I used to be that child. You mentioned the child that laid their head on the desk. I used to be that child, and I used to be that quote unquote labeled bad child. But I always kind of joke, and I'm like, if one of my 51 teachers had said, Tammy, why do you sleep on the desk? And I had told them because it was the only safe place to sleep, maybe things would have been different, So when I went into first grade, teaching that, I just try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I know, like you said, it's hard now. It's a curriculum. It's stringent. It's tests. It's everything else. So I always just tried to kind of build activities into my lessons that would build self-esteem, little I am activities, and a little magic mailbox I had where they could ask questions and just different things.
What are some of the signs that a student is not doing well, emotionally, socio-emotionally?
A lot of lack of contact with other children, lack of facial cues with you. A lot of children can't even look you in the eye. I've literally put my hand on a child's shoulder and had her wet herself. There's just all kind, I just look at it. If they're not jumping into school and smiling and they're laughing and, children are inherently, especially young children, should be happy. They should still be that childlike person. And if that's already kind of a little bit damaged by first, second, third grade, it only gets worse from there.
What is the difference between a student who is not in a good place emotionally and a student who's just bored?
Well, that again, you don't always know that. So you have to try to challenge. You have to make the classroom as fun as possible. I used to do some of the same silly exercises when I would substitute high school that I did with my second graders, just to get them engaged. It actually worked fun. I was the teacher, that the substitute that people used to say to me, you're the meanest sub we have, but we like you the best.
Okay.
I kind of took that as a compliment. I would have fun with them. I would say, I humor you guys all day long. Humor me. Let's do this. Just to get them to open up, to get some trust and stuff. But you don't always know. And sometimes, some children are bored. But again, our brains are wired to learn. Our brains are wired to always be learning. So if a child looks like they're not engaged in learning, maybe, we just have to try to find another way to engage them, I guess.
Okay, so a teacher notices a couple of these flags that you mentioned. What does he or she do?
Well, it depends on the grade. If it's a younger child, you can't always come right out and ask. I would have never told some of the teachers what was happening to me, but you have to build up a sense of trust. You can build up a sense of, build their self-esteem up and try to get them to trust each other. I mentioned my magic mailbox, and I used to put questions in this mailbox that I thought they had to hear or wanted to hear. And then you could see them kind of making bonds and making connections between each other, not knowing who asked the question. So just getting them to really trust the system and trust you enough to come forward and say something.
But
You can't fix every child, but you can at least try to help them understand that they're not alone and that there's resources for them.
what is this magic mailbox that you talk about?
Oh, so it's my magic mailboxes I had in first grade. I put a mailbox in my classroom, and I used to tell them they could put letters in there, pictures, whatever they wanted, ask questions that they didn't want to necessarily ask me in person.
Hmm.
And then I would feed, if I knew somebody was struggling or had a feeling somebody was struggling, I would feed that mailbox with questions I thought they wanted to know the answers to. And you got some pretty interesting questions. And I would take it even when I substituted high school and just be like, come on, guys, humor me.
Hmm.
And I got a lot of questions. And that's kind of what started me on this whole journey. I had a child reach out to me 14 years later and say, if it wasn't for my magic mailbox,
Wow.
I don't know where I'd be today.
And so does every student get a mailbox, or is it just one general mailbox? How does that work? Because basically what I want to do right now, what I'm trying to do is I want to take this copy paste. If a teacher likes the idea, I want her or him to implement this in the classroom. So is it like a general mailbox in the class, or does every student get one? Like, how does that work?
I did have one general mailbox that was just kind of in there for the younger children. And I'm actually trying to I'm starting up a nonprofit probably in the next couple months where I'm going to try to make it a program where
Oh,
they
I love
could,
that.
because now obviously a lot of it's going to be digital because there's not actually a physical mailbox, but it's more of a mentorship program. Children are afraid of, they don't want to go into the safe room at school, even though that's where they're supposed to go for support, because they don't want to be labeled. They don't want to be seen. They're embarrassed, so it's kind of an outside source where they can get the help, get the answers, know that there's a support out there for them, but they're not labeled and they're not, known as that kid.
Of course, absolutely. Especially at that age, nobody wants to be labeled anything really, except the cool kid.
Right.
Okay, so the magic mailbox is a general mailbox. It could be a physical mailbox. It could be a digital mailbox where the student basically asks you questions. I'm assuming not anonymously because you have to know where they're coming from, but it's a chance that he or she asks you a personal question. You can answer them without any sort of face-to-face interaction until the bond is formed.
Exactly.
What else? Give me another example of this.
Of the mailbox?
No,
Or just in general?
of a different way a teacher could, sort of reach a student who needs this reaching out.
So a lot of these children that are completely disconnected have very little self-esteem. They have zero positive self-identity. They've never been told, they're not told they're loved, they're not hugged, they're not anything. So a good example is we used to do an I am wall. And every day when first day of school, we would write I am, and we'd write 10 things about ourselves. And then we would close our eyes and write 10 things about the person that loved us the most, what they would say about us. Then we'd wipe out anything negative. And then literally, this is first grade, and it was deafening, but we would stand up there in the front of the room every day and we would say our 10, I am beautiful, I am amazing, I am funny, I am smart. And we did it every single day of first grade. And, my hope is that just by hearing those positive affirmations day after day after day, that some of those children that don't hear it start to believe it.
All right. So there's an I am wall. Every student gets a piece of the wall, right? A piece of this real estate. And they make a list of their good attributes, I'm assuming, or just any attributes that come to mind.
No, we took out anything negative. I wanted it to be all positive at that point.
So do you tell them, write me 10 things good about you, or just write me 10 things about you and then take out the negative?
I did write 10 things that you think about yourself, and then 10 things that your favorite person might say about you.
Nice. Right. Okay.
So they had to picture their favorite aunt, their uncle, their sister, and a lot of them needed a lot of help. A lot of them was, Miss V, what do you think? And I'm like, well, you're beautiful. And they'd be like, okay, help me spell that, because they were little.
All right, good. So then every morning they come in, either fill the wall or they just say it out loud. I am.
We would say it out loud while we were putting away our coat. That was just our thing. We unpacked while we were getting everything ready. We would go through any questions that were in the mailbox. Then we would do I am, and then we do the Pledge of Allegiance and move on with the day.
Does this work with any grade level, or is there sort of a cap to it?
It can go up a little bit. When I used to substitute, of course, they always had those silly games where you sit on the couch, just to give them moving around and give them some, whatever. And I used to do it with bean bags, and we used to throw them around the class and toss, kind of like playing popcorn, and they would have to say them like I am, whatever. And we would do it until they repeated one. And then I'm like, okay, we're done for the day, guys. I'm like, if you can't think of anything new, we're done. Let's go work. And we would take breaks and do that sometimes. So I did it with high school, and they came up with some good names for themselves and words, but it was fun because I think learning should be fun. So
Anything else? Any other ideas that a teacher could sort of take and like implement in their classroom?
Groups, a lot of group things. A lot of these children do not have the social skills, especially after COVID. So
Especially after
everything,
COVID. Yes.
I tried to do as much stuff as I could in
hmm
groups
hmm
to teach them that social interaction, just getting them close together in little groups and learning how to talk to each other and actually communicate with each other.
What is the effect of a student who doesn't have anybody reaching out to them?
It can be pretty devastating,
Hmm.
honestly. I mean, if they don't know there's help out there, I mean, like I said, I'll be honest and just use my own personal experience. Both of my parents were alcoholics. My mother was a child psychiatrist. My dad was a very high-end stockbroker.
Hmm.
So no one would have ever looked at my family and thought something was wrong.
Right.
Um, but I didn't per se have really parents, no boundaries. I mean, I didn't even learn about unconditional love until I was 25 and pregnant with my first child.
Hmm.
So I know what I went through, and I've gone through 30 years of a healing journey to get over that. And so my goal is to help some of these children realize that their life experiences they're not life sentences.
Hmm.
They don't determine their future. They just are something that happened to them, and it's bad and it's ugly and it's not fun, but it's up to them to decide they want to do something about it and get help. And there's help out there.
And so how did you turn out so okay?
I don't know. Just a very positive. I know my brother even, I do have two family members, and most of my families are recovered alcoholics or recovered addicts. And I don't know. I just had a very, everybody, all kids grab a role model. They all they make a new role model, a new family role for themselves. And I was kind of the people pleaser and the happy person and the hold it together kind of person.
Right.
Humor, a lot of humor.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good coping skill that children develop. But I'm not sure. I just knew there was something better out there. And, I did have my grandmother who would say, it's, you're going to be fine. You're going to be good. Just keep going, keep pushing. And I just inherently had a positive attitude. So I was lucky.
Well, good for you.
I was very
That's
lucky,
amazing.
honestly. Just that, I think the most important thing is that there's help out there for children. And teachers, they have it really, really, really hard right now with all these issues that children are facing. So it's a struggle. It takes they say it takes a village, and right now it takes a really big village, and teachers have a tough time right now. And I feel like the more you can engage and get your children to trust the system, the more they're going to be willing to learn from you.
Nice. Is that the magic mailbox behind you?
Yeah. I do it for a lot of podcasts. A lot of people want to.
I just noticed it.
Yeah, I have a Facebook, like my Instagram is Tammy's Magic Mailbox. A lot of people will just drop me questions, message me that way.
Nice. Can I see it? There it is.
It just says, ask me anything.
That is the magic mailbox. That is where.
Now, when I was in first grade, it didn't look so pretty because the kids got to decorate it. So,
oh, even better.
Even better. Yep.
Okay. Remind us of your two books again.
The first one is just called Surviving Alcoholic Parents. And the second one is called Helping Children of Alcoholics and Other At-Risk Students.
Okay. And the author is Tammy Vincent, which is
Tammy Vincent. And I would say you could get them on Amazon, but they canceled me. So they didn't like that title. So you have to get them through my website.
Oh, snap. Which ones? Both of them?
Both of them. Yeah, they canceled my whole account. They didn't like the Surviving Alcoholic Parent one.
Wow.
And they canceled me.
You've been canceled.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mrs. V.
I wasn't canceled.
Oh, no. I mean, in that case, what's your website?
It's just TammyVincent.com.
Very good.
So it's just my name.
Very good. And your Instagram is?
Tammy's Magic Mailbox.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to put all these links in the show notes. People could, reach out to you. All right, Mrs. V, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's our show for today. Share this episode with your teacher friends who might benefit from listening to it. Don't forget to rate this episode and subscribe. I'm Ram Stakawi, and this is Legendary Educator. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.